Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Apple Gaming SE. This is the Apple News and Opinions section for November 5th through November 11th. As always, we will start out with new subs to the channel. I've got 3 subs since last week. I hit my goal of 40 subs. I have 40 subscribers here on YouTube. Thank you so very much. I don't know who all of you are, but I know that Mac Gaming Guides here on YouTube subscribe to me, so I appreciate that a great deal. And the goal is now to hit 80 subs. So thank you everybody for tuning in, subscribing, watching the videos, liking, commenting, disliking. That happens occasionally. For the most part, it's good, but some people don't like my videos, and that's fair. So I thank you all so much for all of the feedback, positive and critical. It's great, and I will continue to improve based off of what you, the viewers, want. So thank you for that. Our first story this week is that there will be no 27-inch iMac coming. This comes from both 9to5Mac and from Macworld. The quote from is this. Quote, Apple's standard practice is not to comment on future product plans. It's a phrase frequently said by CEO Tim Cook during quarterly results queries. However, the company clearly does not want customers to wait for a product that is not coming anytime soon. It wants to boost its bottom line and have customers invest now. End quote. Apple didn't say anything specific about an iMac that might be larger than 27 inches, which is what all of the Apple commentators on 9to5Mac, Macworld, Apple Insider, and so on, they're all having the same idea. My opinion is that's probably a 2025 product, if that's going to be a product. The reality is I don't think they want to cannibalize the Studio Display XDR market, and that they're probably still looking at market trends to see if something like the Apple Silicon iMac Pro would have benefits over a Mac Studio and a Studio Display or Pro Display setup. I'm going to guess it's probably not, since the last iMac Pro, while it was good, it wasn't exactly a market banger. So there's that to consider. And frankly, part of this may come down to the nano texture options from the Pro Display and the iMac Pros, the old iMac Pros. Apple might still be trying to determine if it's worth expanding on that manufacturing capability. If not, or if Apple is going to abandon that build-to-order option because it's not a standard option, you have to request it, then a 30 or 32-inch iMac Pro might be a realistic option. Our next article is from 9to5Mac. Mac sales are resuming normal growth after pandemic and Apple Silicon bumps. This is an opinion piece by 9to5Mac. Essentially, the author Ben Lovejoy makes a counter-argument to Jason Cross over at Macworld. Cross states that Mac sales are down, and it's hard to square that fact, even if you compare the Q4 23 to the early 2021 sales. And yes, still considering the artificial spike in Mac sales in Q4 of 2022, Mac sales are still down right about 20%. Lovejoy argues that Apple is seeing a trend of normalizing sales, which is a result of Apple Silicon giving reasons to upgrade year over year. The trend is, and will be long term, a positive one for Mac sales. I think the real reason we saw the big spike, the M2 MacBook Airs, which is by far the most popular Mac sold, or so Apple says. We have no sales numbers to work from. Those were introduced in Q3 of 2022. We saw a big redesign of the MacBook Air, and at this point, the M1 series had proven itself to be every bit as performant as it was advertised. The M2s were going to be better. So in Q4 of 22 is right at the start of the back-to-school season. Obviously, no one outside of Apple knows the truth, but I don't think Lovejoy is outright wrong either. What I don't think is the whole truth is that a year-on-year upgrade is the majority of it. I really don't think that's the primary reason that Mac sales are going to trend upwards over the long term. And I also don't think that's why we're seeing such a big spike, or such a big dip, I should say. If it was, I think we would have seen M2 iMacs, and we wouldn't be hearing Apple compare the M3 Macs to Intel Macs. Like, if you think back at the Scary Fast event, I think they said something about comparing to Intel Macs over like 25 times in that one 30-minute keynote. So I'm writing and recording this on an Intel Mac as it is right now. They last a long time, and it's been a key selling point for Macs for like 2 decades now. You know, long term, a Mac is cheaper to own than a PC because it's going to work for you longer than a PC will. And I don't think yearly upgrades is the primary reason for this, like I already said. I also don't think we'll have a good idea, really, of what Mac sales are going to be until we start to, as far as the trends go, until we see the M4 and the M5 and maybe even the M6 years. I suspect the 3 to 5 year upgrade cycles will remain the norm for Mac sales. I also suspect Apple feels the same way. That's why they're still selling 3-year Apple Care plans. Next is every Apple processor compared, as new M3 Max matches the M2 Ultra from 9to5Mac. So sticking with the 9to5Mac trend of stories here and the M3 series, our next set of benchmarks from Geekbench 6 do continue to bear out. The M3 Max SoCs are creeping really close to the M2 Ultras. They're both over 21,000 points, with the M3 Max just a small 218 points behind the M2 Ultra. It's very impressive. In terms of raw compute performance, based purely on one synthetic benchmark, admittedly, the M3 series continues to impress. There's been a ton of videos this week comparing the M3 Max MacBooks to the M2 series, and it's been very enlightening, most proving out the ray tracing and graphics performance improvements. The compute parts are a little more granular. Sometimes tech tubers and testers are out to see big gains, and sometimes they're seeing remarkably dismal ones. I don't have an article or a video for this, but I do have an opinion regarding tech tubers and the base M3 MacBook Pro. One unfair criticism I've seen is that the base M3 MacBook Pro shouldn't be used by video professionals, just as a blanket statement. But which video professionals? From what I've seen, the base M3 models are getting some unfair flack. Apple very clearly delineates product market segmentation outside of the iPads. The iPad lineup is an absolute mess. And it's obvious to me that the base M3 MacBook Pro is for the, what you might call a junior professional type of person. In 4K ProRes and ProRAW tests, the 8GB model and the 16GB model are usually only a few seconds apart depending on the length of the video. We're talking like 5 to 10 seconds just based on the RAM difference. In 8K testing, it takes the 8GB model up to 4 times longer than the 16GB model. So that should clue you in as to who this is targeted towards. But that's 8K ProRes. Keep that in mind. Do you know what shoots in 8K ProRes? Red cameras, like the V-Raptor, that cost upwards of $40,000. Or if you want something a little cheaper, you can look at the Red Komodo, which is $6,000. Now there are different classes of camera, of course. A Sony A7R5 is $4,000 and shoots in 8K, but it's only 24 frames per second. And if you want to shoot RAW, it only can do 4K 60. You see where I'm going with this. If you're spending $10,000 on a camera, you aren't cheaping out on a baseline M3 MacBook Pro. So when you hear these people criticize the base M3 MacBook Pro, just keep in mind there is a target audience or target market segment for this. It is not for everybody. Moving on from that, the iOS 17.2 betas are hinting that Apple is moving towards letting users sideload apps from the App Store. 9to5Mac is reporting on this. In short, iOS 17.2, there's a new API named Managed App Distribution that's referenced in the code. It looks like it makes sideloading apps possible. Interestingly, a third-party app could install other apps, so maybe a third-party app store could be likely. But what's most interesting is that iOS 17.2's new API also references the ability to enable or disable features based on region. Yes, and this is speculative theory here, sideloading could be region locked to Europe. It depends on if Apple wants to manage that kind of overhead. Sticking with iOS, Apple is pausing work on iOS 18 to focus less on new features and more on bug fixes and quality. Apple has made some great hardware strides over the last few months, from the Apple Watches to the new iPhones to the new Macs, and is taking a break from features for the sake of bug fixes. People sorely underestimate how important this kind of work is. I can tell you from my own experience, working in IT and large enterprise environments, it's tough to shift timetables, but it's worth it when you're responsible for a huge IT infrastructure, which Apple is. They have millions upon millions of their devices that are all over the planet. So good on Apple for recognizing the need to address issues before they become problems. Unfortunately, we have to talk a little bit about a little bad news for Apple in this final story. Apple admits to discriminating against U.S. citizens through the PERM program, paying out $25 million. So Apple had a $6.75 million payout or fine that they had to make, and then pay another $18.25 million in back pay to U.S. citizens that were hired, that if they had not been hiring foreign workers to get them on visas for a green card, those U.S. workers would have gotten that pay instead. So, like I said, it's a little bit of a sad story, but it goes to show you that corporations are corporations. As much as I think Apple is the best, they're still prone to bad decisions, human error, and outright mistakes. I don't know if I believe Apple did this unintentionally regarding the PERM program, like it was an error in their whatever processes they have behind the scenes, I guess with HR. But I am glad that they're giving back pay to the U.S. workers who were discriminated against. So, good on Apple for that much at least. At least they're working to correct it. All right, everybody, that's it for this week. Apple News and Opinions. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe. Now I'm starting the grind to 80 subs, as I said. Leave your comments down below. Happy to discuss these topics with you. You can also reach out to me at Apple Gaming SE on Twitter/X. I'm still calling it Twitter. I don't care what Elon says. So thank you all. Have a great remaining rest of your day, and I look forward to talking with you in the next one. Take care now. Bye-bye.